All right, here we go. Attorney Moe Gangat, welcome back to VladTV.
Yes, another one, Vlad. What's this, number 3?
Number 3.
All right, let's
in
do
our
it.
new studio, by the way.
Yo,
in our new studio.
Is this a new studio, or you just didn't invite me to this one until I got to number 3?
No, we were actually under construction.
All right.
The last few times that you were here. You actually went to the wrong place.
Mazel tov. I did go to the wrong place coming in here this morning. New York, luckily I was able to make it here on time.
Yep.
But mazel tov on the studio. It's beautiful in here, Vlad. I love it.
Thank you. Well, let's get into what's going on right now. So as we speak, the murder trial of Nipsey Hussle is underway. Eric Holder, a.k.a. Shitty Cuz, is, you could say, the suspect, but everyone knows that he did it. The question is, why exactly is Eric Holder going to trial when it's very, very clear that he's not going to beat this?
It's looking like he's probably taking it to trial because there's no available plea options. All right, now he's facing life for not only killing Nipsey Hussle, but several eyewitnesses are testifying that he shot and killed Nipsey. In the process of letting off his gun, a bystander was hit.
Carrie Lathan, who we actually interviewed.
You can imagine if one person is dead, a bystander is hit, the prosecutor's not going to be offering you a great many options in terms of a plea deal. So what I'm seeing from what's happening and unfolding in court, and by the way, this case has taken a long time to get to trial, almost 3 years. Part of that was COVID. Also, a judge died. The judge who was originally assigned died. Finally, now a jury has been assembled. Everybody's ready to go. It's going to trial. What I think his lawyer is going to try to do is basically argue a mental state defense and say that attempted murder or murder is not the right charge here, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. If you look at what was going on in this man's life in the months leading up to this incident, and if you look at what was going on just in the days before, including significant mental health issues that were treated by multiple manners, he's not just getting diagnosed and he's not just seeing somebody. He went through an electric shock therapy session to try to deal with whatever was going on inside his head. So I think what's happening, no good plea option, so you got to take it to trial. No good defense because the eyewitnesses say you let off the gun. And so you argue mental state and you say, hey, my client just wasn't in a good place that day. You throw it to the judge and the jury and you hope they lower the charge from murder to something like assault with a deadly weapon.
Right. And I guess his bail was set at $6 billion.
That I saw that also, $6.53 billion in bail for Eric Holder. And that tells you something. When the prosecutors are looking for that kind of bail, you're not going to get a good plea deal. They want you. They want you bad. The community out there wants justice for Nipsey Hussle. They want justice for the bystander. Tough case.
I actually looked it up. It's 6.5 million.
Oh, it is?
Not
okay.
billion.
All
yeah.
right. My mistake.
Yeah, according to Daily News. Still a very high bail. Something that someone in his position would not be able to come up with by any stretch of the imagination.
Extremely high.
Yeah. We actually interviewed Carrie Lathan, who was basically he had just gotten out of prison after doing a very long stretch. He was with, I believe, his nephew or his cousin, and they're just going to get some T-shirts, from Nipsey store. And then he just got caught in the crossfire and ended up, getting hit. And then he almost ended up going back to prison himself because they were saying that he was associating with known gang members. You see what I'm saying? Since
wow.
Nipsey was, a Rolling 60s Crip, he was literally chained to in a prison cell, after he had been shot, and, took a while for him to get actual go to a doctor and so forth. And eventually it was all dropped and he was able to just go back to his life. But literally he was almost about to go back to prison himself.
That sounds like some real police thing. You get shot and then they start threatening you with associating with gang members who shot you.
Right.
Unbelievable.
I mean, you make a very good point. Electroshock therapy, I just didn't think even existed in this country anymore. I thought that was some old 50s shit, where they would try to shock you from being gay, to being straight. I thought this was just primitive, Stone Age kind of technology, but they still do electroshock therapy to people these days?
I was surprised when I read that. The last time I saw that was probably in The Shining with Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
That's the last
a 70s movie.
Yeah. What was the nurse's name?
Yeah, I know you're talking about that evil nurse.
So apparently, look, The lawyer's gone into court, and that's going to be his defense, that they're going to try to knock down these charges from premeditated murder, eliminate the premeditation element, eliminate the conscious state of mind element, and then say, look, if the guy wasn't all the way there that day, you can charge him with something with a lower level of criminal culpability.
So if you remember, originally, Eric Holder's lawyer was Chris Darden, who was the prosecutor in the OJ case. And I guess after getting so many death threats, he eventually just had to move away from the case. Is that a normal thing, by the way?
The death threats, or leaving a case when you get death threats?
I mean, yeah, lawyers leaving a case because of death threats.
What I would say is that what happens in the criminal justice system is beyond anything a Hollywood writer can ever come up with. It's beyond anything that we're going to talk about here today. What will really happen in criminal cases is beyond your wildest imagination. And the idea that a lawyer would get a death threat and say, I don't want to do this case, is extremely believable. I would say it's probably common. Really, me as a commenter on criminal cases, I might receive a death threat and say, you know what? I'm not going to talk about this case anymore. So yeah, man, it's real stuff out here.
Okay. But the way you're describing it sounds somewhat interesting. I mean, if you show that he's under severe therapy, electroshock therapy and everything else like that, and it's actually verified by doctors, this is not just him self-medicating, right? You actually have paperwork, this doctor saying, I went and gave this guy shock therapy in the days leading up to this murder. Is that almost like an insanity plea in a way?
So that's a great question. I've looked at it. It doesn't look like they're pleading insanity. And so on the one hand, to me, this looks like just, a lawyer, a public defender, really, with just nothing to go with. I'm guessing he probably floated the insanity theory idea. Maybe his client didn't want to do it, and so they haven't actually pled insanity. Instead, they're pleading not guilty, while at the same time trying to argue that given his mental state, he can't be found guilty of murder. He's got to be found guilty. Yeah, he shot him. He had the gun on him, but he didn't, with conscious intent, seek to kill somebody. He couldn't. He wasn't all there. And so to me, again, I'm just from the outside looking in, it looks like there's no insanity plea. The public defender probably said, hey, you got nothing. You should probably, we might want to look into an insanity plea. Maybe you get some pushback. Client's like, no, I'm not insane. You talk to the doctors. All right, we don't have anything there. What's next? And the next, really the only argument it seems like they plan on making in the defense of this defendant is that he's not a murderer. He's just a violent man who didn't know what he was doing.
Do you expect this to possibly fly with the jury?
No.
No.
No. No. I think if you're insane, you plead insanity, you bring in a psychiatrist to say that you couldn't possibly know what you were doing that day. I don't think you try to get cute and you say, oh, I was not all the way there, and so you can't charge me with this element of murder, but I'm still not guilty. To me, this seems like there's a disconnect where the lawyer might be saying, hey, I don't think you were in the right frame of mind, and the client is saying, I'm not pleading insanity.
Right, and I guess California technically has a death penalty, but no one's been executed since 2006.
Is that right? All right. Well, this might change that one.
Yeah, there has not been an execution in 2006, since 2006, but there is 694 prisoners on death row in California. So
that's not a place that I want to visit, death row in California with 694 people who've been told that they're waiting to die.
Right. Well, let's move along. Roddy Ricch, on the way to Hot 97 Summer Jam, was arrested for a loaded gun.
A couple charges. They said he had a loaded gun on him. They said he also had some extended magazines, which are also firearms offenses. New York has some of the toughest gun laws in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I've had guns in New York, and even getting them, like not even a concealed carry, which is essentially impossible, but actually having a home permit took about a year. And I even needed to hire a service to help me set up the paperwork because the paperwork was so complex. Whereas you go to California, when I moved to California, it was like, oh, easy, then go get a gun. So New York, especially Manhattan, does not play around with guns. But in his particular case, he was released the same day and the charges were dropped.
Yeah, he got out the next day. So he got arrested, I think it was the night, Saturday night, going to Governor's Ball. The next morning.
Well, no, it wasn't Governor's Ball, it was Summer Jam.
No, it was Governor's Ball.
Okay, maybe you're right. Okay, yeah, you're right. Oh, okay, yeah, he missed Governor's Ball and he attended Summer Jam. Okay, there we go. I got it.
So he's supposed to go into Summer Jam, and apparently there's a private security company. I don't know if they're scarred from Astroworld or what, but this private security company notices that there's a gun in the car that Roddy Ricch came in. So they call and alert the police who are there on site at Governor's Ball. The cops do a search of the gun. They find, I'm not exactly sure what the weapons were, but there was a loaded firearm, extended magazine. They arrest Roddy and another individual who was with him. He's not able to perform that night. And then several hours later, the following morning, he's released. I think it was the Daily News and the New York Post who confirmed with the clerk of the court that all charges against Roderick, I think his name is Roderick Moore, all charges are dismissed. He's not being charged with anything. So think about that, Vlad. You have the headline performer in the biggest event going on in the city that night. And he gets stopped from taking the stage, hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of people wanting to watch him. They arrest him, they take him away from this performance, they hold him overnight, and what happens the next day? All charges dismissed. I mean, to me, I don't know what happened. I'm assuming there were probably permits and licenses and people who were allowed to hold those guns. They were not able to show that and prove that to police at the location of the incident, but several hours later, when he's been arrested and taken to the precinct, they show it to him. The DA says, all right, well, I can't do anything with this. Let's drop the charges, send everybody home. Seems like that's what happened. And the question has to be asked. If that was Elton John, and Elton John's security guard couldn't produce the necessary paperwork for an extended magazine that he was holding, are you going to take Elton John, stop him from performing, have tens of thousands of people upset, and hold him overnight? And what happens? He gets released, all the charges are dismissed. That same night, he goes and he takes the stage at Hot 97 Summer Jam.
Yeah, where he says, fuck NYPD on stage.
Look, the question remains, the question should be asked. I encourage the people in the New York City Police Department, I encourage the people at the Oversight Board, the CCRB. I encourage anybody in New York who has an interest in criminal justice to look at this situation and speak out and say, are we absolutely certain that the police did what was necessary, that they did everything they could to verify whether or not a crime had been taken place? Because this is a performer who has hundreds of thousands of dollars at risk and tens of thousands of people who've come to see him. And I don't know if you've been in this situation, but I've been in this situation all the time when there's a cop and they need to see something from me to prove something. And I tell that cop, listen, man, I don't have it on me, but I promise you it's this. Let me look through my phone. Let me do this. Let me do that. Let me call this guy. And it's no. We'll look at it at the precinct. Let's go. And that happens every day. And I get that. But ask yourself, is it fair? And if we have examples of a guy like Roddy Ricch performing at Governor's Ball, and minutes before he takes the stage, he gets whisked away, and we're going to deal with this and sort it out at the precinct later. Man, to me, it just smacks of unfairness.
K-Flock is currently locked up, right?
Yep.
For murder.
Yep.
But it's somewhat of a complex situation, it seems, right? It's not cut and dry.
Well, K-Flock came on the scene like 2020. 2021, he's got some songs. He's buzzing. At the end of 2021 is when the cops say the shooting happened. Kid's 19 years old, okay? So 19-year-old kid got a little buzz. He's accused of this shooting, and we have all these video footages being released. And what the defense attorneys have been saying really from the beginning, he's got, I think, El Chapo's lawyer, and this guy also represented Shadi. And he's a great lawyer. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, well, look what happened to El Chapo. Look what happened to Shadi. Watch what might have happened to them if that lawyer wasn't there, okay? And at the end of the day, look, a criminal lawyer can only do so much. The facts are the facts. But anyway, K-Flock's got this lawyer. And that lawyer, when he came onto the case, he said, hey, there was a tip called into the police. And the tip called into the police says that somebody else was the shooter. And it wasn't my guy. So you got K-Flock's lawyer saying that the cops have a tip that somebody else is the shooter. You also have several clips of video footage being released that show what is allegedly K-Flock starting into the altercation with the shooter. But what you don't have is the full footage. And so
what led up to the actual footage itself? What was the altercation leading up to it?
So it's a little complicated with these 2 points. One, did somebody call into the police and offer up another individual as a potential shooter? And 2, if we get the full clips, what are they going to show? It could also be not very complicated. You really just, you don't know. It's a murder charge. And there's also gun charges. He got charged with having a loaded firearm on him, as well as another charge for having a firearm with the intent to commit a crime. So very serious charges. Physical evidence, that's why he's not getting a bond, and he's been locked up for several months now. We'll see.
Well, R. Kelly, he's already been convicted of a whole bunch of charges. And now we're getting up to the point of the sentencing. And the prosecutors are recommending 25 years. Do you expect that to happen?
Probably. This is a New York case. He's already been convicted. His sentencing is coming up. Regardless of what happens in this case, he's going to have another case in a Chicago federal court. Okay? And he's going to be facing football numbers again in Chicago. R. Kelly is just FFL. If you guys know what that acronym stands for, anybody who's an R. Kelly fan looking for the day that R. Kelly will get out and belt out I Believe I Can Fly or whatever the hell else you're waiting for, forget about it. The reunion concert is canceled. I can't imagine this guy ever tasting free air, in my lifetime again. I don't see it. He's going to get sentenced at the end of June. I think his own lawyers are asking for like 17 years. So the government's like asking for 25. His own lawyers are asking for 17. He's going to get a whole bunch of years. And then after that, he's going to face a whole new trial on sex trafficking and other sex crimes in a Chicago federal court. So R. Kelly provided the soundtrack to a lot of my childhood. He's done.
I mean, what's interesting about this case is that it seemed like everything got triggered from the TV special, Surviving R. Kelly. It seemed like he was living his best life and doing whatever he was doing. And then once that series came out, suddenly all the charges started to pile up.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it was a coincidence. You can't say that one has nothing to do with the other.
No, I mean, listen, when you talk about a prosecutor, you're talking about an individual who has the ability to literally wake up and pursue any criminal within his jurisdiction, right? If you are the Attorney General in the state of New York, if you're the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, you can, if you're the Attorney General in New York, you look at the whole state and all the state crimes. If you're the Attorney General, if you're the USAO for the Eastern District, you can look at Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island, all the federal crimes. And you can wake up and you can charge anyone who you think has a crime. And so if you sit there and you have this national, mania going on about a documentary that was just released where a pop singer who is a part of, American pop culture royalty, R. Kelly's name is right up there with the Britney Spears and the Madonna before this. I mean, can you think of a more notable name in the R&B sphere?
Well, no. I mean, he's at the top of the charts in terms of, Boosie's big on R. Kelly. He's like the greatest artist of our generation, and nobody could beat him in the verses. And, I think he has a point in that regard. But I think a lot of times when you see, like, for example, you saw it happen in the OJ case to a certain degree. You get off on this huge case, and there's a little bit of payback, once you get caught up again. Because remember, R. Kelly beat his original case, and there was a damn videotape. There was a videotape of him with an underage girl, and that girl got on the stand and said it wasn't me. And coincidentally, that girl also filed for bankruptcy when he went back to prison. I'm just saying. Not to say that he'd been paying her off the whole time, but he was probably paying her off the whole time, right? So what I'm saying is he got off on something that everyone sort of, their jaw dropped. Like, I can't believe this guy just got off. Now it's almost like, okay, here's payback for you beating that old case in a way. Do you feel that way?
Well, I think all of it is part of it. I think the documentary and the discussion brings it back to somebody's radar, a prosecutor who maybe had the file before or didn't. And yeah, there's payback. I mean, look, here's how it works. If you beat a charge and the prosecutor feels some type of way that, oh, you got off because of this or you got off because of that, prosecutor's never going to forget that. Think about your own little vendettas in your life. When somebody beats you, gets one over on you, when you took a loss that you didn't like, you will never forget it. And it's not, something where you want to get even. No, you want revenge. You want to get back twice as much as they got you. So It's probably part of it.
I mean, it happened in the Bill Cosby case.
Yeah.
Think about that. The fact that he was given a deal originally, and then years later, the new DA came in and said, no, we're going to break this old deal that you got. And the judge approved it because he hated the old DA. They had like a real personal vendetta against each other. And Bill Cosby gets convicted only for the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to say, no, this is all bullshit. He should have never been dragged back into court. Originally, he had a deal.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But it's all personal, like someone's pissed off at someone else. This even had nothing to do with Bill Cosby. It was like a DA judge beef. So yeah, man. Well, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think R. Kelly, 25 years plus all the other cases, R. Kelly's probably not going to see daylight again.
Hey man, look, if you want to be a real winner, if you want to really fire on all cylinders, if you want to really win the game, you got to look at the people and how the real winners act, you know? And it's just in every interaction, every single thing, they are doing it with a purpose. They're doing it with a design. They don't cross the wrong people. They don't make a flippant comment just to make themselves feel better in the moment. They're calculating and they think about the big picture. And a guy like R. Kelly is clearly not that. He's not really calculating like that. He's just kind of all over the place everywhere. And so you have all this fame and you have all this power, and then you also have 20, 30, 40 years behind bars.
Yeah. I mean, no one's going to be winning the prison talent show, for the foreseeable future. R. Kelly's going to have that one, for the rest of his life. YNW Melly. This is a case that we've talked about a couple of times, but now is the trial starting or not starting? I can't really tell.
Should be starting in July. If it doesn't go in July, I think it'll definitely go in September. Basically, what happens in all criminal trials, before the trial starts, all the witnesses have to be prepared. All the evidence has to be submitted, and then it's going to be challenged. One side will say, oh, they can't use that evidence or they can't use that witness. And so about 2-3 months ago, in March, April, people were saying that, oh, this trial is going to start in May, June. But all the witnesses and all the evidence haven't been put in. Now, really, a lot of that stuff is kind of just done. There's really nothing left. The most recent updates had to do with Fredo Bang, and they also had to do with what evidence the cops intend on using to show who the shooter was and where the shots came from. And this is all about disputing the defendant, Melly's defense team's theory or argument that there was a drive-by shooting. So let's go over this a little bit. This is going to be a stunning, stunning trial. I think it's going to go to trial. At this point, plea bargain offers really aren't going to change. The best offer that was going to be made has probably been made. Melly's not going to take it. No further offers are coming. You're going to see the kid go on trial for double murder, facing life.
Right. I mean, recently, the case detective said that YNW Melly was likely the shooter. So it seems like they don't exactly know. It seems like they're somewhat, doing their best guess in a way as well.
Well,
because there's no footage. Is there witnesses?
There are lots of witnesses, but no eyewitnesses to the incident. There's nobody who's a witness who says that I was there when the shooting happened. There's people who were at the studio and they can testify to who was there and who left in what cars. But let's go back to what you brought up with this police officer. This is very interesting. The police officer is not a forensic scientist. He's not a ballistics expert, right? But he's the guy who is in part, maybe there'll be other people that the prosecution puts on, but they're going to put this police officer on and they're going to say that this police officer investigated the crime scene, and based on this police officer's training and his observations of blood spatter, his use of essentially plastic rods, where he takes these plastic rods and he looks at bullet holes and entrance wounds, and then he inserts them at different heights and different angles. And then he's able to reconstruct the angle of the bullets and where somebody was sitting and where blood splatter went. Okay, if you're a little confused by everything that I'm talking about, think for a second that you're a member of the jury and you're being told what's happening by a police officer. Now, on the other side, the defense is going to put up a forensic expert, somebody who has a degree in ballistics, a degree in God knows what else. They're going to put up multiple experts, and this case is going to come down to a battle of the experts. And so on the one hand, the defense was trying to get the police officer thrown out using a legal theory called basically the Daubert test. And what the Daubert test asks, it's a Supreme Court case, it asks this person who's going to testify and say what the angle of the bullet was and where the shooter was, is that guy qualified to talk about that kind of stuff? Does he have a degree? Does he have training? Is he applying a science that can be tested and repeated? Or is he just shooting off at the mouth with his own personal thoughts and opinions? So the defense had challenged the police officer saying that this guy doesn't have the requisite trainings. The judge said, no, I'm going to let him go in. He takes classes on the weekends. He has other people that he talks to. I'm going to let him testify about this. So in theory, the defense lost the Daubert motion. But this is very common, Vlad. A lot of times the judge is going to say that, look, I'm going to let the guy testify. We'll let the jury, we'll let me decide whether or not he's qualified, whether or not the other expert makes more sense than him. And so this case from the very beginning is going to come down to about 2 or 3 pieces of evidence.
Right. And you mentioned Fredo Bang. So essentially, Fredo refused to answer any questions, and he invoked the Fifth Amendment. He was actually offered immunity from prosecution in the state of California if he answered the questions, but Fredo still refused. So was Fredo at the studio or something, or what is his connection to this whole situation?
The cops have everybody or several individuals, including Melly, going back after they left the studio and after there was a shooting, going back to Fredo's home. And that everybody congregated and met at Fredo's place. They also say that there was a phone call placed between Melly and Fredo after during that night, the early morning hours of this whole incident. Fredo Bang was asked by the prosecutors in Miramar, Florida, who were prosecuting Melly, to answer questions under oath and be a witness in the case. Fredo Bang invoked the attorney-client privilege. He said, I can't answer the questions that you're asking me because I have gotten advice from my attorney. And in the course of me answering your questions, I would have to disclose advice that my attorney gave me. And that's privileged information. So because I have that privilege, you can't make me answer these questions. The prosecutors challenged that. And they said, no, you answering whether or not Melly called you is not privileged. Just because you talk to your lawyer about it doesn't mean that you can't tell us about it. That would be ridiculous. That would mean you can go and tell your lawyer anything and say, oh, I can't tell you, I told my lawyer. And the judge agreed with that. But there was a second part of the argument. And Fredo argued that not only is it attorney-client privilege, but it would violate my Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate myself. If I answer these questions and give you the answers, you guys might take that, use it against me, and charge me with crimes. And the government came back and they said, no, we've offered him full immunity. So he can say whatever he wants and we won't charge him. But then Fredo Bang's lawyers came back and said, yeah, but this is just the Miramar Department. What about Broward County? What about other states? What about the feds? And so unless you're telling me that this guy has freaking global immunity, his Fifth Amendment right applies. The judge agreed with that. And Fredo Bang has invoked his Fifth Amendment right to not testify, to avoid giving statements that could be used against him and that would incriminate himself. So
he could essentially say, I'm not cooperating at all, and there's nothing you could do about it.
I plead the Fifth.
Love it. Love it.
No, and well, there's stuff you can do about it. The jury's going to hear the guy pleads the Fifth. Okay. What does that mean? I don't know. Right? So
it could be painted as, okay, clearly he knows something. He's trying to hide something. I'm not saying that's happening, but that's how the prosecutors are probably going to try to paint it.
The idea is that what the Fifth allows you to do is to say that I have invoked the Fifth. Now, how lawyers will paint what that means in the context of the broader story is all about telling that whole story and telling it in a way that people can connect the dots and stay with you, because you start talking too long, you lose them.
NBA Youngboy, another artist we've covered a couple of times in our previous interviews.
The king of hip hop, according to the youngins.
Right. What is the update on the case?
His co-defendant took a plea. His co-defendant took a plea where the co-defendant says that these are both my guns and I possessed them that day and I'm going to give them back to you guys. And he's going to be facing on that charge about 10 years. He's going to get scored on the sentencing guidelines, and the sentencing guidelines will say exactly how many, the range of sentences, but the max on his is 10 years on the charge that he pled to. It is not clear, and no one will know, whether he is cooperating against Youngboy. For example, a cooperating statement that he could make is, I was there that day, that was my gun, I saw Youngboy hold it. And under our laws, the way we're charging these kids, we're going to go ahead and say that NBA Youngboy, while outside of his grandfather's house shooting a music video, according to his co-defendant, touched this gun. He's now facing 2 consecutive 10-year sentences. So this is the prosecution's hope, that this kid will cooperate and say that Youngboy touched a gun, and then they can use our federal sentencing laws to hit Youngboy with like 20 years. It's not clear, however, whether the kid is cooperating. The way they do it in Louisiana federal court is you go into court and you plead guilty. And then there's a sentencing memorandum and a plea agreement. The plea agreement says that you and the prosecutor have agreed that you're going to get charged with this, you're going to plead guilty to it, you face 10 years for it, they're going to waive the other charges. The plea agreement, however, also says and explains that under the practice in Louisiana federal court, there may or may not be a cooperation agreement. In every case where a defendant pleads guilty, there is a cooperation notice that is signed and filed. That notice says the guy's not cooperating, or it says he is cooperating. But in order to keep people from knowing whether people are cooperating until the actual time of their public sentencing, they engage in this practice of having everybody submit a cooperation notice, and you can't actually know what it says, so you don't know. It's a very interesting case. It's a case where the 2 guns and the extended magazine that Youngboy is being charged with possessing on that day, well, now another defendant is admitting that he possessed it on that day. And that other defendant may or may not say that Youngboy also possessed it on that day. If he does, Youngboy's got a tough situation on his hands. If he doesn't, couple that with the earlier ruling in this case where the judge threw out a lot of the evidence against him based on an illegal search and seizure, Youngboy's got a really good shot at beating the Louisiana case. He's got another gun charge in California, carries with it another big sentence. So if he beats so let's put it all together. So if his co-defendant doesn't cooperate, plus he got his evidence thrown out, he can beat the Louisiana case, then he's got to go to California, and he's got to beat the California case, and then maybe he gets out. Or it could all go spectacularly wrong. The co-defendant could cooperate, he gets like 5 years, 7 years in Louisiana. The prosecutors in California look at him and say, all right, let's finish him. And he gets a couple more years in California. And that would be the end of NBA Youngboy.
Yeah. So basically, he's not out of the woods yet.
He's deep in the woods, Vlad. And you see it in the music and you hear it in his, he's just, a lot of times people see celebrity, they see arrest, and then they see plan, that there's probably a plan. No, there's celebrity, arrest, and there's pure uncertainty.
Yeah. And
there's good lawyers who can try to guide you through the process. But I just laid out the process for you for NBA Youngboy. It is a very, very cloudy process.
Well, recently the rapper Trouble got killed while visiting a girl. Apparently, according, to all the news that's coming out, he was, he went to the girl's apartment. He had allegedly spent the night. A man who the woman was romantically involved with, either currently or somewhat recently, forced his way into the house, and some sort of scuffle occurred, and Trouble was shot in the chest and killed. He went on the run for like a day or so and eventually turned himself in. What's going on with this case right now?
Did you see the girl's Instagram story?
Yes. She basically, because I think people are accusing her of setting up Trouble and stuff like that. I don't really see that. I don't see it. Listen, I've dealt with jealous ex-boyfriends in my life before. I know how these things get. It's like a crime of passion, essentially, because from what they're saying, Trouble and the man who killed him did not know each other.
Right.
So it wasn't like, let me go get Trouble. It was like, nah, this guy's sleeping with my girl and I can't take it, and violence ultimately ensues.
It seems like the case is obviously going to come down to what this woman says. And in her Instagram story, she said, "Oh, everybody." She just basically said a lot without saying anything. But she basically said that, I'll take the stand, or at some point you guys will hear my story. I'm assuming she's referencing when she takes the stand. We don't know what she's going to say, but assumedly she's going to say, one of two things. He came here knowing trouble was here, and he was out to pick a fight, in which case I think the defendant's going to be in big trouble. Or she's going to say that, I was here with trouble, and my ex, or this gentleman I was living with, didn't know he was here. And he just came, to do whatever. And in the process of him coming, they met each other, a confrontation unfolded. Now, depending on, I think, what she says about his knowledge of who was going to be there that night, I think that's what the case turns on. Because if I'm a juror and I'm sitting there and I'm going, "Oh, you knew that guy was going to be there and you went there to pick a fight with him and then you shot him," I'm going to feel one type of way. If I'm the same juror and I say, "Oh, you and your wife had a fight," or "You and your baby mom or the person you're living with had a fight a week ago. You haven't been there for a week. You decided to go back home. You ran into her and she's sleeping with a man. The man got violent towards you and said, 'Hey, who the hell are you?' And you just entered your own home and then a fight ensued." I'm going to feel a very different type of way.
Yeah, and the question is, whose gun was it?
Right. I don't.
Right? So there's that aspect of it. You're hearing, the internet chatter and so forth. Like, for example, let's just say the man showed up unarmed, and when he storms in there, let's just say Trouble was the one with the gun. Let's say Trouble carried a gun with him for protection, and then when this man showed up, he went for his gun, and then a scuffle occurred, and the man got the gun away from him and ended up killing him. I'm not saying this is what happened, but we don't know whose gun it was.
Exactly.
Right? Did the man show up armed, or was there a gun already in the house? And that was the gun that was used. In that particular case, let's just say that it was Trouble's gun that Trouble ended up getting killed with. Is that like a walkaway situation or no?
I don't think it's ever a walkaway situation, but every fact matters. And I mean, look, if you're going into your own house or a place that you have established residence in because you've been living there, right? And another man is there, and another man is there in the capacity of a romantic relationship with someone that you had just been in a romantic relationship with a week before, and all these facts are going to add up. And so, I hesitate to say what's going to happen without knowing. It's hard to tell. But I think, the one thing that I'll say about this case, it's crazy how people live on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, Vlad, if this was you, if you were in a love triangle, essentially, or if you were with one guy and then you're with another guy and then these two guys get into it and one guy gets killed, wouldn't you stay the hell away from social media? Wouldn't you just say, "Oh my God, the last thing I want to do is feed this narrative. The last thing I want to do is open up a comment section under a post." What are you thinking?
Well, yeah. I mean, initially she shut down her social media, or she made it private. And then she resurfaced and then made this statement. And, we already, based on, people DMing me and so forth, I already knew who it was. That same night. She was like a female rapper, aspiring. I don't think she was very established, but yeah, I mean, people already knew who she was. So maybe in her mind, it's like, listen, everyone is already accusing me of the worst thing. Everyone knows who I am. Let me come out and just make a statement.
Forget about it. Because you're going to make that statement. Now people are going to repost it and commenters are going to comment under it. Your thing is an IG story, so maybe they're not commenting directly under. But you have invited people who know about you, who know about Trouble, who know about the defendant, to come and now give comments about what you're saying. How's that going to help you? How's that serving your interests? It's not. And it's remarkable to me that the people involved in the controversies that you and I talk about decide to go ahead and open up comment sections on their own profiles for us to talk about it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sad situation. I know Boosie, who's a regular on my show, was very close to trouble. He actually was crying at the funeral. So it's a loss, man. And, you know, it kind of teaches you a lesson that you probably, you know, a woman who you're not in a serious relationship with or married to, going to a woman's house as opposed to just getting a hotel somewhere is a very dangerous thing, because you don't know who's going to be there, who's going to show up, boyfriend, baby daddy, who else she's involved with. She could be sleeping with 10 other guys. You know, one guy's paying her rent, other guy's paying her car note. Like, you know, I mean, you don't know. You don't know what these girls are doing out there. And you're walking into a situation completely blind in someone else's home. You know, so all the guys out there, just get the hotel room. This is what you're trying to do. Get a hotel room. Get a Motel 6 if you're poor. Like, you know, if you ain't got money for a Ritz-Carlton, get a, you know, get
Make
a
sure she's
Super 8.
making you work for it too, because if it seems too good to be true, it might be a trap.
Might be a trap. Yeah, because remember back in the day, there was the Gucci Mane situation. He went back home with I believe a stripper, and it ended up being an ambush. And he ended up killing one of the guys.
Yo, public service announcement to the viewers of VladTV. Watch out for the eye candy, male or female. If you're randomly sitting around one day and, you know, maybe you're not the most attractive person and people don't throw themselves at you, and now all of a sudden somebody is throwing themselves at you and inviting you back to their hotel room, be advised that you might not want to go back to that hotel room. You might leave there without your pants, your wallet, your jacket, your watch. I mean, just, you know, the trouble thing, I hope men didn't need that to remind them that you can get yourself into some real big problems chasing women.
Yep. Well, probably the biggest case in hip hop right now is the YSL RICO case. We've actually covered this extensively with George Cheedy, who is an Atlanta journalist. He had been actually following this overall case very closely over the past year. And in fact, 2 weeks before everyone got arrested, he actually contacted us for the first time and said, hey, there's something really big that's about to happen in Atlanta around some rappers and some arrests and so forth. He didn't really go into a lot of details, and we kind of like just took that with a grain of salt. And then when all the arrests came, he called again and said, this is what I'm talking about. So you looked into this case. What's your overall feeling about what's going on right now?
My overall feeling about what's going on is that there is a lack of respect for constitutional rights of criminal defendants. Look, anytime you get named as the defendant, anytime your picture gets put on that wanted poster, the public, we are going to think you did it, right? I mean, that's what they didn't accuse you for nothing, right? So that is out there, and I get that, and I understand that, and that when you see people in orange jumpsuits with their hands cuffed behind their back getting, you know, paraded through into court, they look guilty. I get that. But the level to which everybody has convicted 28 people in the court of public opinion for being in a gang for over a decade and in corroboration committing acts of murder and violence and robbery, to me, is shocking. It is absolutely shocking. Where is the evidence showing that these 28 people even know each other? Where is the evidence showing that any single one of them received $1 from the head of the gang, Young Thug, to go and do murders? Where is the evidence? And it's one thing to charge people, but to say that of these 28 individuals, not one of them deserve a bond. Gunna does not deserve a bond. He is too much of a threat to society. Even if we put an ankle monitor on him, lock him up in a house, make sure there's no electronics in the house, and have him have absolutely no visitors, he is too much of a threat to society.
Yeah, I feel like based on all my, research and conversations, like with the George Cheedys in the world and so forth, and actually going through the 88-page indictment, Gunna was sort of like wrong place, wrong time. The way that he's even connected to all this is that he was, he was one of several members in a car that got pulled over, and they found a bunch of drugs and guns
In the car behind
in
him.
the car behind them.
Right.
Right, exactly.
And Gunner on that charge, you know what ended up happening? He got arrested. He was put through the system. You know what his charge was at the end of the day for that incident?
What's that?
I think it's an overt act and furtherance of the conspiracy. He paid a fine for a window tint, and they sent him on his way.
Right.
They didn't have anything on him on that incident, yet currently that incident and very little else is being used to charge him with 5 to 20 held without bail. Under the current procedural rules of the Fulton County Superior Court, because of COVID and other delays, they can't do a speedy trial in 90 days. His trial is 6 months out into January.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. The fact that he's just denied bond altogether is, and he seems like the least violent out of that whole situation.
But it's not about seems. There are things that we have in this country, ladies and gentlemen, and they're called civil rights. And they're what makes us different from the Russians, okay? If you are asking for a reason for why to give any fucks about Young Thug and him and his friends all getting locked up, it's so that we don't become the Russians, okay? It's so that we have a basic concept that you're innocent until proven guilty, that we don't punish you until you're found guilty, and that if you are a person with no violent felonies in your history, if you're a person willing to wear an ankle monitor, if you're a person willing to pay for round-the-clock security to lock you up, have you have no outside contact with any individuals, have no electronics in your house, no contraband in your house, then we're gonna allow you bond. If you don't allow a bond, what are you doing? You're punishing that person. You're punishing them without any finding of guilt or innocence.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. George Sheedy felt that Gunner was the only one in this case that could potentially walk away with a somewhat minimum sentence. Everyone else is facing a lot. But him in particular seems like he's just dragged along into this whole situation.
To me, everybody is dragged along into the whole situation. To me, I think that the lawyers think that the whole indictment is unconstitutional and we would challenge it, but for the fact that we know that we're not going to get any justice in this court. That's what I think. I think that if they were up here in New York in federal court, they would move in and move to dismiss and say, Judge, read this indictment. Tell me what this guy did that has him facing 5 to 20 with no bond.
Well, it is established, because a lot of this started over a murder that happened, many years ago. This guy named Nut, from the YFN crew. He got murdered. Young Thug rented the car that committed the murder. That's established, right? Now, there's various social media posts they're trying to use with that, this, that, and the third, but that part right there is established. So now you've rented a car that was used in a murder. Doesn't that kind of drag you into a murder at that point?
So if I rented a car and 6 years ago or 7 years ago, it was used in a murder during the time of my rental, and there's nothing else connecting me or associating me with that murder. I rented a car at 9 a.m. At 5:40, it was at this location. A murder was committed. You don't have me at the location. And at 8 o'clock, somebody returned the car to me. I went and gave back the rental. I have committed 0 crimes. But more importantly, if you accuse me of committing a crime, and I go to the court and I bring literally my entire family who has grown up in Atlanta and never left, if I bring beacons of the community, if I bring global record executives, and I bring this security plan, I expect you to give me a bond. But more importantly, if you don't give me a bond, I understand what's happening, which is the levers of the criminal justice system are being used in an unjust way to coerce people to do things that are not in their interest, and to coerce them after violating their rights. You have unconstitutionally denied these people a bond, in my opinion. And now, what are they going to do? Well, anything they do at this point is the fruit of the poisonous tree. That guy can go out there right now and admit to 17 murders. Say, you're right, I did it all. They were all me. I'm King Slime. But you know what? After what I saw in court that day, where that lawyer put on a bond motion that under the laws of this country absolutely should have been granted, I don't care. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant what he did if we are going to treat bonds like something that judges can do at their whimsy. Where are the charges against this individual? I'll tell you, and I saw your tweet, and your tweet is absolutely right. There are proffer agreements. People have given proffers. But let me tell you what the
let me just sort of mention what you're talking about. My tweet came after Young Thug was denied bond by the judge, and the judge specifically said, based on the proffers that I heard, I'm going to deny bond. That was part of the justification for denying bond. And
your tweet is right?
Yeah.
And the judge heard those proffers? I will get this opportunity one day if I'm lucky, but this is a question for the judge. What in those proffers did you hear that told you that this guy doesn't deserve a bond? Listen very carefully to the words that I'm telling you, citizens of the United States of America. This is what happened in court that day. The government went to the judge and told them 3 pieces of information. The first piece of information is that individuals have told us that Mr. Williams, Young Thug, Jeffrey Williams, is dangerous. The second piece of information, they said that Mr. Williams is powerful. And the third piece of information that they have proffered is that if you cross him, he will kill you and your family. That's what was said in proffer agreements. Understand that a proffer session is nothing more. All it means is that I'm a defendant. I'm going to talk to the police and the district attorney, and they can't use what I say against me. So somebody went in there and said, Young Thug, yeah, he's dangerous. He's powerful. If I cross him, he'll kill me and my family. How on earth does somebody saying that in a proffer session lead a judge to conclude that this man is a gang member who is so dangerous to the community that we cannot offer him bond? The words that you are dangerous, powerful, and if I cross you, you will kill me and my family can largely be said about a lot of people. There are people in this world who will say that about me. I think most people in this world will say that about our former president, Donald Trump. And so let's go back to what else was said at the hearing that day. There was a specific question posed to the prosecutor. Do you have any evidence of Jeffrey Williams making any threats to intimidate any witnesses or any co-defendants in this case? The answer was no.
Well, there was the group chat.
The group chat is from 2014.
Right. And in the group chat, he essentially said that anyone that goes to court and promises to tell the truth will get fucking killed or something like that.
7 years ago, there's some group chat where this guy makes some threat about people talking to cops. Okay, fine. That's not what the judge was relying on.
Well, there was also a social media post. Like I remember after Nut got killed, and this is part of the case as well, Young Thug went on social media and said, yeah, you guys will lie to your girl, lie to your mom, lie to your friends, and then go to court and tell the god-awful truth. Y'all motherfuckers need to get killed.
That's not what the judge relied on, though.
Okay.
The judge relied specifically on what the prosecutor said is the threat to witnesses and other co-defendants. And remember that threat that Jeffrey Williams is posing is based on statements, powerful, dangerous, if you cross him, he'll kill you and your family, things that could be said about anybody. It is not based on any evidence of a specific threat made to a witness. You've spoken to co-defendants. Can any of them tell you that he's threatened them about this case? No. Okay, so the same person who told you that he's rich, that he's powerful, that I can't cross him, you spoke to him and he also is saying that this guy hasn't actually threatened me about this case? Then what the hell is this rich, powerful nonsense stuff about? So here's another part that came out in that court hearing. The prosecutor said, we haven't made offers to anybody. In fact, I'll tell you, Judge, be honest, I'll be candid with you. We want to make offers. We're looking to make offers. We plan on making offers. But we haven't made offers to anybody. So what I would tell you and what I tell everybody is that if you think that the judge had a basis to deny a bond based on co-defendants or witnesses saying that this guy's a threat, forget about it. The evidence is absolutely clear. The prosecutor said on the record, no evidence of any threats made to any witnesses or any co-defendants about this case by Jeffrey Williams. Fact. No offers made by the government to any co-defendants in this case. Fact. What those two facts mean is that if somebody in a proffer session says a guy's dangerous, a guy is powerful, I can't cross him, he'll kill me and my family, that does not indicate evidence of criminal activity. That does not indicate evidence of witness tampering. That does not indicate evidence of an individual who's a threat to public safety. And so, taking all that together, me as an independent observer, if I see that unfold in a courtroom with competent lawyers, competent prosecutors, competent judges, we all know what should happen. And when it doesn't, you got to ask the question, is the fix in? Is anybody caring a goddamn about constitutional rights, about procedure, about order, about standard, about burden of proof? Or are we just saying, man, there's too many shootings in Atlanta. Those cops got shot 2 weeks ago. We know these guys are dirty. Round them up.
Well, lyrics are being used in this case. It's all over the indictment. There's, basically, there's one lyric about that, I haven't done any murders, but I got something to do with them, or something like that. That's very sort of fuzzy. And I think like a lot of these lyrics will be thrown out before it actually gets to trial, if it ever does come to trial. But YFN Lucci's mother got shot, right? Because according to prosecutors, this whole thing is about the YFN YSL war that's been going on forever. So YFN Lucci's mother gets shot. And Young Thug releases a song where he has the lyric, I shot at his mommy, now he no longer mentioned me. Now, you could go through this whole like protect black art and, the whole thing that
I hate that protect black art argument.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's dumb, and I think it's trying to just really gaslight away from an actual situation. But yes, there is, people make up lyrics, it's an artistic expression, everything else like that. But when someone's mother got shot, and their mother got shot, and then you make a lyric talking about their mother getting shot, and now he doesn't talk about me anymore after his mother gets shot, aren't you automatically implicating yourself into this potentially? Like, isn't that just...
Well, why is the lyric about why all of a sudden? How do you make the leap to the lyric is about YFN Lucci's mother? That lyric.
Well, hold on. Actually, Young Thug has talked about YFN Lucci's mother already. I'm saying that there's social media posts where he says, YFN, if I didn't like what you had done for your mother, I would have been killed you already. Like, you see what I'm saying? So there's actual statements.
That's fine. Look, for you, DJ Vlad, to make that connection, I'm not here to touch on that. I'm here to touch on the connection.
It's not me making the connection. It's the prosecutors. I have no say in this.
Well, but if you look at the prosecutor's indictment, the prosecutor is basing a lyric and an incident that are multiple years apart, okay? The incident, the shooting, happened several years before the lyric. The lyric is a generic lyric about an insult towards another's mother, and not an individual. I'm attacking generic people's generic mothers. Okay, I haven't identified anyone. I've attacked literally every single person's I know's mother. Like a yo mama joke is part of the lexicon of American discourse. I saw a prosecutor read that in court, and I had to train myself to not laugh out loud that here is a whole motherfucking prosecutor with 30, 40 years of experience under his belt, taking a lyric with absolutely no context, not taking the context, saying, Your Honor, this is a defendant who has a 7-year history with this individual. He has referenced his mother no less than 18 times. He has said this and this and this and this and this about his mother. None of that shit happened, Vlad. Here's what the guy went up there and did. He went up there and he said, Hi, I'm a prosecutor from the Fulton County, Georgia. This is Jeffrey Williams. Jeffrey Williams has rapped. I shot at his mom. Now he don't talk about me no more. He was talking about YFN Lucci. YSL is a gang. They're involved. All that shit is just fucking out of thin air. The lyric he reads the lyric as evidence. I shot at his mom. Now he don't talk about me no more. And then he starts pulling the shit out. And maybe they have the evidence, right? Maybe. But it's not out. And they admitted that they haven't put it out yet. So for me to use that lyric without context to show that it means something makes you look very, very juvenile. I mean, what does that lyric mean? You said somebody says something about somebody's mother? You want to charge them with RICO for that? Is that your argument, sir? That's what I expect the judge to say.
Right. Well, a yo mama joke and I shot your mom. You don't really joke about shooting people's moms.
You
know what I'm
haven't
saying?
grown up in the Bronx.
Okay.
Shit, before I rep people in the Bronx, maybe I didn't really. I talk about shooting a lot. I didn't know it before.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, let me ask you another question here. And this is something I've discussed before, but now I'm actually talking to a lawyer, so this is a lot more poignant. So we live in a very interesting world right now.
Yeah.
In terms of lawsuits. Remington paid $73 million to the surviving families of Sandy Hook because they sold AK-47s, and the families argued that they were marketed towards people that might have been mentally unstable. $73 million. Now, let's just say, in this particular case, Young Thug pleads guilty. Let's say they offer him 10 years and his lawyer's like, this is the greatest deal you're going to get. Take the 10 years. And in the plea deal, one of the things is that Young Thug admits that the line about shooting someone's mother is actually about YFN Lucci and about how YFN Lucci got shot and he somehow implicates himself in the shooting, right? This is all make-believe stuff. But let's just say in the plea deal, it's now official in the paperwork. Would YFN Lucci's mother then be able to sue the record label, which is 300 Entertainment? The parent label is Warner Brothers, which is really like the cash cow, right? Would she be able to sue Warner Brothers and say, listen, we've now established in a court of law that you guys are promoting and profiting off of these violent acts that your artist is then rapping about. I want $500 million. Is this a probable court case, or is this will never happen?
Shit, after this interview, it's a probable court case. Look,
you see where I'm going with this,
I see where
right?
you're going with it. The first line of response is anybody can sue anybody for anything.
Right.
Obviously. Second line, though, is yeah.
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 I mean, you have 6ix9ine. Tekashi 6ix9ine is being sued by a roster of victims, including some represented by Meek Mill's former attorney, Joseph Tacopina, which I'm sure Meek and Joe laugh about a lot. But 6ix9ine he's gonna file for bankruptcy soon, I'm guessing. Basically, he made a tactical decision to default on the liability aspect of this case. So in any case, you have two questions that have to be resolved in your favor to win. One, is this person liable? Are they responsible for what happened to you? And two, well, what happened to you? What are you owed? What loss have you suffered? So in the 6ix9ine's case, there's all these people who've been shot and terrorized, and they're suing 6ix9ine, and they're saying that, look, he was in the car recording and instructing people and paying them to come do this, and then I got shot. He owes me lots of money. So he made the strategic decision to default, to not contest the liability phase, to basically just say, yeah, I mean, I admitted to it in federal court. How am I going to defend it in the civil action? I did all that. So now he's challenging the damages. That, yeah, so what? You know, you got threatened with a gun. Is that really worth $10 million? Is that really worth $100 million? Maybe it's worth like 50,000, right? So that part he's defending, where he let the liability go. Nobody, however, has gone after 10K, Universal. They didn't know that this guy is doing this. They didn't think that, hey, wait a second. If we put out all this content, maybe bad stuff can happen.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that's all it is. That's all negligence is. That if you do something and you know that by doing that is going to lead to horrible consequences and you do it anyway, and a reasonable person in your position would say, no, I'm not going to do this. This is all going to be my fault if I do this. I mean, why not? Listen, maybe these are times when we should be Russia, right? Maybe we should have a czar go in and say, 73 people shot in Sandy Hook by AR-18s. How much have you made making AR-18s over the last 5 years? $18 billion? Give me half. You know, how much have you made selling this gangster rap music? Hand it over.
Yeah. And if that happens and a major label takes a massive loss, you will then see a domino effect where labels will one by one start dropping every so-called street artist or any artist that raps about violent acts just because of the liability aspect. You know what I'm saying? It almost might even create a shift in hip hop where suddenly all the marketing money and focus will be on like the Cordays of the world, like the guys who don't rap about anything violent and just sort of the lyrical, spiritual guys and so forth. And, you know, I mean, on a certain level, I'm not even really mad at that because it is time for hip hop to grow up a little bit.
But you're wrong. I'm with you. I think trampling on civil rights with sprawling RICO cases as a way to respond to the very real problem of gun violence in inner cities is just stupid.
Yeah, I agree on that.
I think trampling on business profits to try to get people to stop putting out content that has these themes of violence is not a bad idea. Why not? This is a problem.
Yeah.
There's no reason the music has to have the references to the violence and the guns that it does.
Right.
However, I think that if you were to eliminate the record labels, I don't think you're going to stop the music.
No. And it will basically go back into independence and underground the way it was in the very beginning. NWA, when they first came out, they were actually an independent label.
There is no independent. There is no underground. I think what you would see is the continued undeniable rise of violent imagery, and not just music, in everything, Vlad. Think about the F-bombs I'm dropping here. I don't have a tie on. Go outside New York City. They're selling weed on every corner.
Right.
There is a degradation happening in our society, and there's a lack of solutions. There's a lack of a coherent approach to solve it. And so I think, yeah, you might kick some labels out, and they're going to start putting more Taylor Swifts and Cordays out, but the music's not going to stop. The YouTube stuff's still going to bump.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the 90s, Ice-T got dropped by Warner Brothers for putting out the song Cop Killer. You know, he had a group called Body Count. You know, it was a rock group, and there's a song called Cop Killer. I believe the album was actually called Cop Killer. And there was like, you know, imagery of, I believe, like cops, you know, and so forth on the album cover. But you've seen this before, but the stakes have not been this high. And I feel like the payouts that have been happening for companies that don't really have anything to do with the actual situation have got more and more ridiculous. Like there's that Geico case where a woman had sex with a man in a car who was covered by Geico. She caught an STD. She then expected Geico to pay for her pain and suffering. And they're like, we just insured this guy for car insurance. We didn't tell you to go fuck in this car. Like, we don't know what his, we don't check the STD status of the people that we insure. That is ridiculous. But yet, she was awarded $5.2 million by a judge. This is actual news. $5.2 million by Geico. They turned down $1 million offer and ended up having to pay $5.2. But even $1 million is ridiculous. What the fuck does Geico have to do with someone catching an STD? I mean, seriously. Maybe the condom company. Now, okay, you have Geico condoms always break, and you know that they've been breaking, but you try to save money, and your janky condoms, you know, now I have chlamydia. Okay, I get it. But Geico Insurance, that have no idea about anyone's STD status. You could have full-blown AIDS and get an insurance policy from somebody, right? But now, you see what I'm saying?
Look, the American justice system is a moving thing. It's a fluid thing. It can be bent and used in so many different ways. But I want to go back to what you were saying, because I think it's a very, very legitimate point. And I saw Kevin Liles discuss protecting Black art. And, you know, he was at the stand at the YSL case, and they asked him about this concept of hip hop being put on trial. And he said, you know, I've been fighting this battle for years, and they've always gone after and villainized hip hop. And I don't think that's fair. I think something is happening in hip hop, which is that kids, very talented young kids from very rough places, are making art, and then they're getting arrested. And the two are kind of not necessarily related. And when one of these young, talented kids who's making good art gets arrested, a third thing happens. And it's a guy with a check. And he comes and he says, hey, you're doing great. Here's $10 million. Do more of it. And that kid's going to get what, 10%, 5%? He's a kid. He actually just popped. He knows nothing. He's probably going to get fucking 2% of his yearly earnings. And that model is really dangerous. And that model is really flawed. And that model needs addressing. But I think, and you're right. I think people are going to start trying to hold these people criminally responsible, the labels. But I don't think that's going to stop it. And, you know, I hate to be all fucking tree hugger with this shit, Vlad. But if you want to stop young, talented kids who are making beautiful art from getting arrested, you have to change the circumstances that they are in. And we are talking once again in 2022 about the lack of education, the lack of opportunity, the amount of animosity between police officers and communities in our inner cities across this country. And it is unacceptable. We got, right, I think Pac's birthday just passed, and there was a member of Congress reading his lyrics on the House floor. We got money for wars, but we can't feed the poor. And it's absolutely fucking true. And it's beyond me at this point that we literally print money for anything and everything. And yet we've never been able to print money to solve the very real problem of innocent, talented, promising, bright youth getting locked up in horrible circumstances in our inner cities. It's a shame. It's a tragedy. I don't think suing the record labels will help. I think what we really, really, really need to do in this country is sit down and say, you know, this is an opportunity. This is God telling us that, you know, these kids need help. That's all this music is. This music is a message that, hey, this is what's happening in your inner city. This is what's happening in your high schools. This is what your kids are listening to. I was outside of St. Peter's Preparatory School, and the high school football team was practicing. And I bought a coffee from the local coffee shop, and I thought, I'm going to sit there and watch this practice. I saw these kids go at it. It was beautiful. And the whole time I was listening to the music, and it was 22 G's. It was Kodak Black. It was NBA Youngboy. It was fucking violent. It was talking about guns. It was talking about killing. And I thought to myself, this isn't what kids should be listening to, but they are.
Yeah, I mean, listen, but I grew up in high school listening to NWA, which is really just as violent.
But it's been 20 years, Vlad.
Yeah, it's been 20 years. And now it's, I mean, and back in NWA's day, they weren't naming the specific gangs that they were in. But then DJ Quick changed that. He named specifically what blood set he was in. And then that started a chain reaction where people started claiming the type of Crip they are, the type of blood they are. You know what I mean? The GDs, the BDs, and so forth. Chicago created a whole, almost a new genre. You know, Chicago drill, where you're talking about smoking your enemies and so forth. Like, you know, and then the social media put a bunch of fuel in that fire that was never there before. Now you have the fans interacting. Now people are DMing you all this stuff. Now anything that's said about anybody, you will know about it within 5 minutes. And then that spread into Brooklyn drill and into the Bronx. And now you have 22 G's who's being charged with attempted murder. Now you have K Flock. But then you have all these other cases. There was that big case in the Bronx where, remember, like all those drill rappers that are basically rapping about each other, they all get arrested for a bunch of shootings and so forth. It's a different animal, and I think it's mostly because social media, because you never had that aspect of it before. You know, Tupac does Biggie, you know, would have to go into the studio and record something and press it up and then release it. And by the time that happens, he's probably thinking, well, you know something, let me not bother to do that. You know, fuck all this. They can't just go straight, you know, to Instagram and post a response right then and there. That just wasn't available before. It's a whole different world. And yeah, I mean, listen, I hope it all works out and all these guys get out and it's determined that they had nothing to do with nothing. But, you know, even when I talked to George Cheedy, like, Young Thug actually in his songs, and this is part of the case as well, actually breaks down all the gangs that he was affiliated with in his music. Now you could say it's just black art, but he's breaking down things that are going along with the things that he's being charged with. You can't say, I've never been in a gang, but you're actually talking about all the gangs that you're in. It is what it is. I mean, you're claiming, you know, blood and slime and everything else like that. And then you can say, oh, it's just art, you know, but you saw how well that worked in the Tekashi case.
Look, the lawyer's job is to distinguish somebody who is in a gang versus somebody who has violated the RICO law. And right now, from what I've seen in that case, is prosecutors saying really the former, that they've established that this guy's in a gang as we commonly understand it. I don't know that the prosecutor's going to make the RICO case, but my bigger critique of this issue is we have a real problem with gang violence, with violence in rap, with guns, and we have absolutely no solutions. Look at what happened up here in New York with Tekashi 6ix9ine. We, in theory, took the gang leader, the guy who was responsible for creating all sorts of mayhem and mania and really promoting it nationally, internationally. And what did our justice system do with him? Gave him a tap on the wrist. Said, hey, here's your get out of jail free card.
Yeah, less than a year, right? Or maybe exactly a year or something of that sort. Well, but that's because he overly cooperated. He took the stand. He gave information they weren't even asking about because
I understand all that, but
right.
I just
and the thing about it is that you have a group of men now in the YFN case. Like imagine what would happen if Young Thug said, you know something, I'm cooperating against everybody. I'm going to tell on Gunner. I'm going to tell on Yakati. I'm going to tell on YFN Lucci, my friends and enemies. I'm going to tell the 27 other guys. Like, I'm going to give you something on each and every one of them. I will take the stand as many times as you want me to. Let's not forget, I just interviewed Sammy the Bull. He admitted to 19 murders and got less than 5 years. Everyone was in it. Oh, how could this mass murderer, this serial killer get less than 5 years? Well, I'll tell you why. Because he went to, I believe, 6 different trials, took the stand for 2 years. He got 2 mafia bosses indicted, along with like 20-something other people, a bunch of captains, crooked cops, crooked Teamster, leaders and so forth. He overly cooperating, gave them everything that they could possibly get from this high-ranking person. But I don't think Young Thug is going to do that. You know what I'm saying? Because he knows that if he does that, I don't think he'll have a career coming out. He'll probably have to go into hiding afterwards. I don't think he'll be able to pull a Tekashi and just say, yeah, I'm a snitch and I'm a rat. I'm going to do rat videos and I'm ratting and snitching. I don't think that'll work for Young Thug.
I don't think it's working for Tekashi.
It's not really working for Tekashi. But you know something? He does, well, depending on how you look at it, because I've seen some shows that look like they were sold out with a whole bunch of screaming white kids that could give a shit about the whole snitching thing. But he was a different type of artist. You know what I'm saying? He was more of a pop, kind of artist, I feel.
But don't you think that we kind of failed as a criminal justice system? That if we were handing out a kingpin charge in this case, he's getting one of the kingpin charges, and he walks after doing less than a year.
Yeah.
And what's the climate like in the Bronx and uptown and throughout parts of Brooklyn where him and his gang members were running? Is it significantly improved? Is there a sense of justice? I don't feel it. My worry, my fear is that we have so many prosecutors spending so much time arresting people, and there's no consideration being given for how to stop the cause. How do we prevent these issues? How do we stop being so redressive and punitive and responsive? And where do we get proactive and say, hey, let's make it so that when you have this young, talented kid who's making good music, what resonates with people isn't headshot. Let's have people resonate with something else. And I think the answer is very simple. It's this degradation that we see throughout society, where in the interest of the almighty dollar, if it makes money, it makes sense, we are so willing to let just so much crap go. Look at the cannabis industry in New York. The cannabis industry in New York was built off this idea that we're going to have equality and we're going to give redistributive justice and we're going to be responsible cannabis users. Fuck it. How is selling 30% Laffy Taffy in a rainbow colored package responsible marijuana usage?
Yeah, I just bought some the other day, actually, from a van.
How is
on the
how is
street.
letting 6 corporations whose only interest is to increase their bottom? They have one duty, a duty to a shareholder. The shareholder has one concern: money. How does it make sense to take all of this market and hand it over to 6 large companies and let them fulfill their duty of making the most money possible?
Well, Moe Gangat, appreciate you coming in and really breaking things down. You have a lot of armchair lawyers on the internet.
I don't have any armchairs.
Who claim they know what's happening and break everything down and so forth. But I like to bring actual, real lawyers to come in and speak on what's happening. And I appreciate you coming in all these times and really breaking things down. I think a lot of people have really gotten enlightened from you talking about these cases in the past. And from what I understand, a lot of people actually call and actually give you some business also from these DJ
Yes.
Vlad interviews.
Yo, shout out to DJ Vlad. I'm actually not a criminal lawyer. I'm an employment lawyer in New York City, and we do, cases on behalf of workers who've been victims of sexual harassment, discrimination. They get hurt at work, and many people call me and they say, "Hey, yo, I saw you on DJ Vlad." And I'm like, that has nothing to do with employment law. I'm like, nah, I still want you to be my lawyer. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So shout out to you, Vlad. I will be back here next time with more details to share. Try to bring you guys that good information and give you some perspective. Always a pleasure.
That's what it is, Mo. Until next time. Peace.